Alrighty, today I'm going to be breaking down the Wigger's diagram, and I'm Ellie Reese. So as we all know, this is the Wigger's diagram, and in this video, I will be breaking apart this graph just to explain the individual pieces. So we will be starting with the ECG. We first see the P wave, which represents atrial depolarization. We then have the PR interval, which can be measured by the start of the P wave, like right there, and goes all the way to the QRS complex. The QRS complex represents ventricular depolarization, but we are going to break this down even further. The Q wave is the first relatively small wave. Then we have the R wave, which reflects main depolarization of the ventricles and is fairly large compared to the other parts. Then final wave represents the final depolarization of the ventricles. We then have the ST segment or interval, and is the time period at the end of the QRS complex to the start of the T wave. This interval reflects the period of no potential for either depolarization or repolarization of the ventricles. And lastly, the T wave represents ventricular repolarization. You can see on this ECG that another heartbeat begins, but does not finish on this graph. I'm first going to break down what each line means in this graph. The red line represents ventricular pressure, the black line represents aortic pressure, and lastly, the blue line represents atrial pressure. I'm now going to explain what the different color blocks in the background mean. The first yellow or tan block really has no importance right now. The pink box that follows represents systole. The big purple box represents diastole, and the section of yellow until the faint line represents systole as well. At point C, the AV valve closes. At point A, the semilunar valves open. At point B, the semilunar valve closes. And at point D, the AV valve opens. In this first section of systole, the order of events is isovolumic contraction, followed by ejection. Moving on to diastole, we see isovolumic relaxation, followed by rapid intake, diastasis, and atrial systole. And that is all for this graph. We can see on this graph that the bottom has been nicely labeled for us. Point E represents isovolumic metric contraction. The downward slope in ventricular systole is ventricular ejection. Point F on this graph is isovolumetric relaxation. And lastly, the incline in ventricular diastole is ventricular filling. I hope you now better understand the Wigger's diagram.